Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be diving into the third chapter of the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. If you haven't seen the previous videos in the series, I suggest you go back and watch those. We covered the foreword, or the preface of the book, and the first two chapters. I think this is a pretty good book to learn about attracting things into your life, about how that works, because it breaks it down pretty simply into the root being the self-image. Once you wrap your head around it, everything else starts to make a bit more sense. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button on this video, as that helps YouTube push out more videos like this for more and more people to change their lives. Also, make sure you are subscribed and that bell notification is ticked so you don't miss out on all the great content we will be putting out every single week. Let's jump right back into it with Chapter 3 of Psycho-Cybernetics. Chapter 3. Imagination, the first key to your success mechanism. Imagination plays a far more important role in our lives than most of us realize. I have seen this demonstrated many times in my practice. A particularly memorable instance of this fact concerned a patient who was literally forced to visit my office by his family. He was a man of about 40, unmarried, who held down a routine job during the day and kept himself in his room when the workday was over, never going anywhere, never doing anything. He had had many jobs and never seemed to be able to stay with any of them for any great length of time. His problem was that he had a rather large nose and ears that protruded a little more than normal. He considered himself ugly and funny looking. He imagined that people he came into contact with during the day were laughing at him and talking about him behind his back because he was so odd. His imaginings grew so strong that he actually feared going out into the business world and moving among people. He hardly felt safe even in his own home. The poor man imagined that his family was ashamed of him because he was so peculiar looking and not like other people. Actually, his facial deficiencies were not serious. His nose was of the classical Roman type, and his ears, though somewhat large, attracted no more attention than those of thousands of people with similar ears. In desperation, his family brought him to me to see if I could help him. I saw that he did not need surgery, only an understanding of the fact that his imagination had wrought such havoc with his self-image that he had lost sight of the truth. He was not really ugly. People did not consider him odd and laugh at him because of his appearance. His imagination alone was responsible for his misery. His imagination had set up an automatic negative failure mechanism within him, and it was operating full blast to his extreme misfortune. Fortunately, after several sessions with him, and with the help of his family, he was able gradually to realize the power of his own imagination was responsible for his plight, and he succeeded in building up a true self-image and achieving the confidence he needed by applying creative imagination rather than destructive imagination. This is such a good example of someone who allowed a false narrative to control their life. I think so many of us do this every single day in many different situations. We place limitations on ourselves and attribute ideas to other people that simply aren't true. I think that is probably more damaging than anything. We actually decide what other people are thinking about us without actually knowing. I'll quickly share a technique I used to stop attributing negativity to people and actually attribute positivity, even if it wasn't there. I remember when I would reply to a text message with something that I perceived to be funny and the person would not reply for a while, I'd kind of start to get nervous and wonder if maybe it wasn't as funny as I thought, or maybe I offended the person, and it would, consume my thoughts until that person replied or something else happened to distract me. But what I started doing was reframing the negative to a positive. Instead of seeing the person on the other end of my message as, rolling their eyes and going, ugh, not funny, I'm not even going to reply, I would imagine that same person laughing so hysterically that they could not stop even for a moment to write back. They were laughing so hard. They were laughing so hard they had tears in their eyes and they couldn't even see their screen anymore. And this would put a smile on my face, and I could now forget about it completely and go about my day. I framed it in the way that I wanted, and I attributed the reaction that I wanted to cause to the other person, even if that wasn't happening on the other side. It was real enough for me. All right, let's get back into it. Creative imagination is not something reserved for the poets, the philosophers, the inventors. It enters into our every act, for imagination sets the goal picture which our automatic mechanism works on. We act or fail to act not because of will, as so commonly believed, but because of imagination. A human being always acts and feels and performs in accordance with what he imagines to be true about himself and his environment. This is a basic and fundamental law of mind. It is the way we are built. When we see this law of mind graphically and dramatically demonstrated in a hypnotized subject, we are prone to think that there is something occult or supranormal at work. Actually, what we are witnessing is the normal operating processes of the human brain and nervous system. Okay, I want to focus on something here in this paragraph. He says, we act or fail to act not because of will, as is so commonly believed, but because of imagination. I was just reading a book titled Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion by Emil Quay, and he said exactly this. He talks about how if a plank that's 30 feet long and 1 foot wide were placed on the ground, we would be able to traverse it no problem. However, raise that plank very high into the air, and we would not be able to muster up enough will to make it across with the same ease that we would if it were on the ground. Did our willpower change? No, our imagination did. We can now imagine falling to our death, whereas on the ground there is no such imaging. We continue. For example, if a good hypnotic subject is told that he is at the North Pole, he will not only shiver and will appear to be cold, his body will react as if he were cold, and goose pimples will develop. The same phenomenon has been demonstrated on wide-awake college students by asking them to imagine that one hand is immersed in ice water. Thermometer readings show that the temperature does drop in the treated hand. Tell a hypnotized subject that your finger is a red-hot poker, and he will not only grimace with pain at your touch, but his cardiovascular and lymphatic systems will react just as if your finger were a red-hot poker and produce inflammation and perhaps a blister on the skin. When college students, wide awake, have been told to imagine that a spot on their foreheads was hot, temperature readings have shown an actual increase in skin temperature. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience. In either case, it reacts automatically to the information which you give it from your forebrain. Your nervous system reacts appropriately to what you think or imagine to be true. As it's been said before, guys, your subconscious mind does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined, and your body will react in the same manner. So if you're imagining yourself arguing with your coworker or spouse about something and you're getting riled up in your imagination about whatever it is, your body will react as though it's happening. Your heart rate will increase, your stress hormones will activate, you'll start feeling anxious and on edge. That's why it's so important to monitor your thoughts throughout the day when attempting to change your behavior, and anytime for that matter. Next, he talks a little bit about hypnosis, and then he gets back into the book. The human brain and nervous system are engineered to react automatically and appropriately for the problems and challenges in the environment. For example, a man does not need to stop and think that that self-survival requires that he run if he meets a grizzly bear on a trail. He does not need to decide to become afraid. The fear response is both automatic and appropriate. First, it makes him want to flee. The fear then triggers bodily mechanisms which soup up his muscles so that he can run faster than he's ever run before. His heartbeat is quickened. Adrenaline, a powerful muscle stimulant, is poured into the bloodstream. All bodily functions not necessary to running are shut down. The stomach stops working and all available blood is sent to the muscles. Breathing is much faster and the oxygen supply to the muscles is increased manifold. He says here that it's commonly thought that these reactions are purely emotional, but the point is that we get to that emotional state by our perception of what we imagine our environment to be. He then makes this point. Let us suppose, for example, that the man on the trail had not met a real bear, but a movie actor dressed in a bear costume. If he thought and imagined the actor to be a bear, his emotional and nervous reactions would have been exactly the same. Or let us suppose he met a large, shaggy dog, which his fear-ridden imagination mistook for a bear. Again, he would react automatically to what he believed to be true concerning himself and his environment. It follows that if our ideas and mental images concerning ourselves are distorted or unrealistic, then our reaction to our environment will likewise be inappropriate. Realizing that our actions, feelings, and behavior are the result of our own images and beliefs gives us the lever that psychology has always needed for changing personality. It opens a new psychologic door to gaining skill, success, and happiness. Mental pictures offer us an opportunity to practice new traits and attitudes, which otherwise we could not do. This is possible because, again, your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an actual experience and one that is vividly imagined. If we picture ourselves performing in a certain manner, it is nearly the same as the actual performance. Mental practice helps to make perfect. He goes on to cite some studies done with people regarding improving skill like throwing darts or basketballs. One study showed that just by imagining throwing the darts accurately improved the actual accuracy of the people who imagined. Another study took 3 groups that had them throw free throws with basketballs. One group actually practiced 20 minutes a day. Another group imagined for 20 minutes per day, and the control group didn't practice at all. After 20 days, the control group showed no improvement at all. The physical practice group showed a 24% improvement, while the imagination practice group showed a 23% improvement. That's the power of imagination. He then talks about how rehearsing things in your mind can help you in the real world when things come up. Like for salespeople, rehearse scenarios in their minds so that they have an answer ready for a customer when it arises, or how we can rehearse before a job interview. Even if we don't encounter any of the questions we've rehearsed, it'll help us be more confident going in. And I think we all do this to some degree, but for it to be effective, we need to complete our rehearsal with us winning, getting the result that we want. Many times we'll start rehearsing a scenario only to end up failing and looking stupid in our visualization, and finally deciding not to go through with whatever we rehearsed because our imagination caused it to go badly. Deliberate rehearsal coupled with a strong positive self-image can work wonders. He talks a bit about various professional athletes or musicians who use mental rehearsal of their craft as a form of practice and getting better. This technique shows us that it's not magic, but rather a deliberate act that we can improve our lives. It's not that you are a machine, but rather your physical brain and body function as a machine that you operate. You must first clearly see a thing in your mind before you can do it. I remember hearing that UFC champion Conor McGregor would visualize defeating his opponents many times in his mind before ever stepping into the octagon with them. Many times defeating them in the same round and in the same way that he'd practiced in his mind. Dr. Maltz continues, this same creative mechanism within you can help you achieve your best possible self if you will form a picture in your imagination of the self you wanted to be and see yourself in the new role. This is a necessary condition to personality transformation, regardless of the method of therapy used. Somehow, before a person can change, he must see himself in the new role. Look, if you want to change your life, you have to imagine yourself as the person you want to be. I've done this in my own life, even long before I totally understood the concept or read books on it, and I've done it many times for many different things. You may have heard the term act as if. And this is what's being described here. He tells of a couple doctors in psychology who tested their theory on some mental patients. They had them take a personality test, and then they were asked to take the same test again, but this time imagine that they were a typical, well-adjusted person on the outside. About 75% of the patients showed a marked improvement on the second test. He goes on. The aim of self-image psychology is not to create a fictitious self which is all-powerful, arrogant, egoistic, all-important. Such an image is as inappropriate and unrealistic as the inferior image of self. Our aim is to find the real self and to bring our mental images of ourselves more in line with the objects they represent. However, it is common knowledge among psychologists that most of us underrate ourselves, shortchange ourselves, and sell ourselves short. Actually, there is no such thing as a superiority complex. People who seem to have one are actually suffering from feelings of inferiority. Their superior self is a fiction, a cover-up to hide from themselves and others their deep down feelings of inferiority and insecurity. How can you know the truth about yourself? How can you make a true evaluation? It seems to me that here psychology must turn to religion. The scriptures tell us that God created man a little lower than the angels and gave him dominion, that God created man in his own image. If we really believe in an all-wise, all-powerful, all-loving creator, then we are in a position to draw some logical conclusions about that which he has created, man. In the first place, such an all-wise and all-powerful creator would not turn out inferior products, any more than a master painter would paint inferior canvases. Such a creator would not deliberately engineer his product to fail, any more than a manufacturer would deliberately build failure into an automobile. The fundamentalists tell us that man's chief purpose and reason for living is to glorify God, and the humanists tell us that man's primary purpose is to express himself fully. However, if we take the premise that God is a loving creator and has the same interest in his creation that an earthly father has in his children, then it seems to me that the fundamentalists and the humanists are saying the same thing. What brings more glory, pride, and satisfaction to a father than seeing his offspring do well, succeed, and express to their full abilities and talents? Have you ever sat by the father of a football star during a game? Jesus expressed the same thought when he told us not to hide our light under a bushel, but to let our light shine, quote, so that your Father may be glorified. I cannot believe it brings any glory to God when his children go around with hangdog expressions, being miserable, afraid to lift their heads and be somebody. I think that a lot of this human experience has to do with discovering our spiritual gifts and realizing that we are just as much a part of this creation as God is. The fact that the Bible says that we're created in the image of God should be some indication that we're special. And if we don't believe that we have the talents or abilities to accomplish our dreams, is rather insulting to the power that created us. Okay, guys, now for the practice exercise. I love how at the end of each chapter he gives us an actionable step to take. Let's see what he says. Your present self-image was built upon your imagination pictures of yourself in the past, which grew out of interpretations and evaluations which you placed upon experience. Now you are to use the same method to build an adequate self-image that you previously used to build an inadequate one. Set aside a period of 30 minutes each day where you can be alone and undisturbed. Relax and make yourself as comfortable as possible. Now close your eyes and exercise your imagination. Many people find they get better results if they imagine themselves sitting before a large motion picture screen and imagine that they are seeing a motion picture of themselves. The important thing is to make these pictures as vivid and as detailed as possible. You want your mental pictures to approximate actual experience as much as possible. The way to do this is to pay attention to small details, sights, sounds, objects in your imagined environment. One of my patients was using this exercise to overcome her fear of the dentist. She was unsuccessful until she began to notice small details in her imagined picture. The smell of the antiseptic in the office, the feel of the leather on the chair arms, the sight of the dentist's well-manicured nails as his hands approached her mouth, etc. Details of the imagined environment are all important in this exercise because for all practical purposes, you are creating a practice experience. And if the imagination is vivid enough and detailed enough, your imagination practice is equivalent to an actual experience insofar as your nervous system is concerned. The next important thing to remember is that during this 30 minutes, you see yourself acting and reacting appropriately, successfully, and ideally. It doesn't matter how you acted yesterday. You do not need to try to have faith you will act in the ideal way tomorrow. Your nervous system will take care of that in time if you continue to practice. See yourself acting, feeling, being as you want to be. Do not say to yourself, I'm going to act this way tomorrow. Just say to yourself, I'm going to imagine myself acting this way now for 30 minutes today. Imagine how you would feel if you were already the sort of personality you want to be. If you have been shy and timid, see yourself moving among people with ease and poise and feeling good about it. If you have been fearful and anxious in certain situations, see yourself acting calmly and deliberately, acting with confidence and courage, and feeling expansive and confident because you are. This exercise builds new memories or stored data into your midbrain and the central nervous system. It builds a new image of self. After practicing it for a time, you will be surprised to find yourself acting differently, more or less automatically and spontaneously without trying. This is as it should be. You do not need to take thought or try to make an effort now in order to feel ineffective and act inadequately. Your present inadequate feeling and doing is automatic and spontaneous because of the memories, real and imagined, you have built into your automatic mechanism. You will find it will work just as automatically upon positive thoughts and experiences as upon negative ones. Guys, I can personally attest to this method working very, very well. I actually used it before I had read this book. I had heard the term act as if and figured it was self-evident what it meant and ran with it. I was able to develop confidence and a more presentable demeanor just by sitting in my computer chair in my bedroom and seeing myself as confident. As I recall, it didn't take very long for me to see that change in my life, and the change has been lasting. Okay, guys, it's been a long video, but that's it for Chapter 3 of Psycho-Cybernetics. Please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell notification so you don't miss any videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. Go leave a comment below telling me what you want to work on or overcome. I would love to hear how you're applying this exercise. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.